So your dad is a law enforcement agent, or what is he?
Who, my dad?
Yeah.
The guy just walked past and
He's John. Hey, my father's John Walsh. He had a
so.
show called America's Most Wanted years ago on TV, and now he has a show In Pursuit with John Walsh. He also helped create the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children from the disappearance of my brother Adam Walsh. So.
But how did he get that agency like so quick?
He says that he was in the hotel business, and so he had people behind him supporting him, although he did go bankrupt and, different, very real things. But it is a question on how did he have, nowadays, we have to contact mainstream media and things like that to get on. But he was, days after Adam being gone was, on Good Morning America, and, this is again 1981, so, according to him, he had people supporting him, which was his diplomat hotel bosses and, people in the area in Miami at the time.
So were there other kids that went missing, like prior to Adam going missing, and like, because Adam was the first person I ever remember hearing about, like, going missing on television or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe it's just because my age. But were there other children that went missing prior?
Yeah, in the surrounding time there was, and especially when Adam went missing, there was it actually wasn't little girls that were predominantly going missing, it was young boys. Were being kidnapped. That's also around the time of like the Franklin scandal, McMartin case, and the Finders cult was a little bit later. But yes, we have Eaton Patz was a boy that was taken. He was the first milk carton, and he was taken in New York. Controversy. All of these different cases do have controversy around them. But yes, there were definitely other. Johnny Gosh is one that people would know of, and he was taken around the same time as Adam.
Do you remember if the parents of those kids, did they get that much media or anything like that? Like as much as your dad and your mom got?
No, I mean, that is the thing, is like it was made to seem like it was only Adam or certain cases, when again there were many children being taken around that time, and predominantly young boys.
So how do you think they got so much media attention? That's always what, like with I mean, do you think it's the bosses? I mean, or is your dad in law enforcement?
No, he was never in law enforcement, but his boss was very connected. John Monahan was connected to the Hollywood Police Department, and, it was the lifestyle and kind of the scene of Hollywood, Florida in that time. We have the Diplomat Hotel with a lot of diplomats coming in, a lot of celebrities. It was a very connected kind of atmosphere and environment. America's Most Wanted was a different scenario. That was Rupert Murdoch being with Fox, which was fledgling at the time. And he was obsessed with a show in the UK called Crime Watch UK that they had been very successful with, and he was insistent on bringing it over to America. And so they had asked, I believe, 2 other hosts that were already hosts, and then they denied it, they turned it down, and then they offered it to my father, who did decide to be the host.
So that was
at that time he was in lobbying legislation on Capitol Hill. He wasn't in Indiana.
So prior to Adam's disappearance, your dad had no law enforcement experience, no anything.
Unless it was run-ins with law enforcement, I don't know. But no, he was not. He was not law enforcement of anything, and he still isn't to this day technically, which a lot of people do think he is. He is one of 3 honorary U.S. Marshals in U.S. history.
So how do you think he got that?
After his work for children and his platforms he had.
And so do you think the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is legit? Or?
I mean, again, I don't speak in black and whites. I'm not here making accusations. I think that there's a lot to be concerned about, and yes, I do believe that it's looking like a pay-to-play situation. It's looking like databases and gatekeeping, and I'm simply asking who has oversight of the world's largest child porn database that they control, and furthermore, who has access to that? With all these children's rights issues, like over 88% of child trafficking coming from a foster care system, what's the National Center doing about that? When we have kids being brought over the border through immigration because they know that there's already a well-oiled child trafficking system here, what is the National Center doing about that? Why has the issue increased since its inception? There's so many things that I have asked for 2 years as someone that, as a child, was splayed around and put at all these adult and political events and doing all of this to create this center. I think that I do have every right, and especially as a mother and American citizen, to simply say to the center in my brother's namesake, what are you doing? Can we talk about some of these questions? And I would think that they would want to be upfront about that they would want people to know what they're doing. And, it's just been a big issue about that.
So you started being retaliated on, you said, when you started asking about Adam's disappearance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started speaking up, like we've had problems in the family, and there's the scapegoat, that kind of thing. It was fine, that's family issues, everyone has that. But when I started asking questions about things like National Center, and it was that I was being asked those questions. So
by other people.
Yeah, and so I'm going to my family thinking, they're going to be proud of what I found, or they're going to answer this question, and want to. And it was a very, bizarre way that it was handled, or, oh, you're crazy, or what are you talking about? That Pizzagate stuff, is that what you're talking? I'm like, no, I don't even know anything about that at that point. I was asking you literally about these things. Laura Silsby, Haiti. Why were you in Haiti at the time? What are these very real things? What about my friends would call me, fellow mothers, and they would make a report to the hotline. And it would be a platform that's like a donor or a partner, like Facebook or TikTok. Then they would call weeks later back to check on the report, and it would be like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't have the report. And then my one friend's daughter was trafficked through CPS, and they actually put her on the missing list, and then took her off of it when she was still missing. They it was a struggle to get her on it to begin with. Then they put her on it, and then they take her off, saying that she was found, basically, or isn't missing anymore, but she still was. And my friend had to hire a private detective, private eye, with herself, and go find her daughter in a hotel room being trafficked. And CPS would not do a thing about that, because that's what they're doing in this country.
And so did you ever bring that up to your dad?
Oh, I brought trafficking situations and child abuse, child molestation, sheriffs being involved, celebrities being involved in small one. That sounds a little big, but, in certain situations that I had been exposed to, or that I had been approached by mothers of these children, and given the details and things. And that's not my job, so I gave it to my father. I told my father, who would tell me, I'm going through the right channels, or I'll have it looked into. And then all of a sudden nothing was happening, and it started turning on me, and that's when they kind of set everything up to, in a day, I'm suddenly a crazy person, a drug addict, a child abuser, the whole cliche playbook to discredit someone, and they terrorized my children and I since for 2 years.
So you had told me one time about a story with your friend, one of your best friends. I think, I forget her name.
Lindsey Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my best friend growing up, from the Finger Lakes, from Skinny Atlas, New York. Her parents were beautiful school teachers. I would be over there all the time because I didn't want to be at my house, with my parents. And great people. And she actually was groomed by her boyfriend, Pimp, ultimately, from the Finger Lakes. And she was taken out to Las Vegas, where she was made into a high-end escort. She was in a house. He had a house with a bunch of women in it, and he was guerrilla pimping, basically. And she went missing, and we looked for her, and America's Most Wanted agreed to pick it up, and the story. And I was really happy about that. I was in college at the time, and then when, you know, I come home and my dad's discussing the case and how they're going to put it on the show, and he's horrifically, you know, exaggerating or making up details or who my friend is and stuff like that for the point, for the, oh, a hooker, drug, you know, this John Walsh, you know, on it. And I'm like, this is really horrible. Like, that's not my friend at all. You know what happened to her. You know who's most likely her killer, you know, and who murdered her, the person that's next to her, and the pimp that was pimping her out, who then later went on to kind of target Orlando Brown also. But instead, they ignored that, and they put it several times on the show, especially, you know, around Epstein. And then they tried to chalk it up to a serial killer, these common denominators, serial killers, parental abduction, you know, those were hit up. So I wasn't okay with that. I found that really disturbing, and I know my own father. I've watched him, you know, exaggerate things, unfortunately, and, you know, that's kind of a mode that he goes through, and it wasn't lining up for me. And that's really what got me just to question a few things which I had no idea would cascade into all that it has revealed, to put it that way.
If you could get anything out about your dad, what would you think America would be the most shocked about?
Well, I'm not here. I honor my mother and father. You know, we all have issues, and they have definitely been put through a lot. But, you know, I think that people really need to be looking at truth versus narrative, and realize public personas by these people versus their private life. And that is a very real thing for celebrities or elites. You have a public persona that you go out and put out. You have a private life behind closed doors. And my dad's has pretty much been out in the open with the sex addiction, the, you know, mistresses, the, you know, 10-year divorce proceedings, the restraining orders, all of that. So, you know, I know that it's hard for people. That's where we're at, right? Like, people want to believe in something. They want to, you know, this is something that they've been told. I know who I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing here, and that's not easy. But and it also doesn't have to be so like blah or not. I mean, we just have to realize what's going on. And the National Center, America's Most Wanted, how has that affected America moving forward? My brother Adam's disappearance in his case, what did that allow? What did that enact and put in place to move forward? How has that affected our American children and families? And furthermore, how is all of that now working with CPS across our country to terrorize our families and children and tear us apart for profit?
How is it?
Under the guise of help.
How is it? I mean, because, okay, so when Adam went missing, I remember my life changing. I could no longer ride my bicycle. I could no longer do the same things that I did before because my parents were afraid some guy in a van was going to come by and snatch me, right? So you couldn't ride your bicycle. You couldn't go beside a van. I remember my dad grabbing my arm before I was allowed to go beside a van because he was terrified that somebody was going to like throw me in the van and I was going to be gone forever, because that's what he was hearing on the news, seeing on the milk cartons and everything.
Yeah.
So do you think, I mean, so what laws changed after, you know, like what, you know, in terms of, did they start, the database actually covers like all children, right? Like the faces of all children?
Yeah, the database does. I mean, they did the Adam Walsh Act to get all the sex offenders registered and do that, which there's huge problems, and I don't stand for any sex offenders, but there are huge issues that have gone along with that. The databases with 4th and 14th Amendment rights. You know, and looking at people, they just get funneled keyword triggers for the hotline as far as online data and stuff. So then that gives them the ability to access anybody's stuff to say we need to review it because you got flagged for possible CP on your computer and stuff like that. And people have actually, there's one case I definitely know of, and maybe some others where that's become an issue there. So there's different things. I mean, and then we have ASFA and Title IV with Clinton.
What is ASFA specifically?
It's America's Safe and Families Children. You know, it's the act that they did, ASFA, which goes under Social Security.
So Social Security dollars pay for some of this?
Yeah, and it's our tax money. They're using our tax money. They're taking our tax money, taxing, to provide services for children, which then they have put incentives and quotas on. So then they're using that and taking it, getting more money. So it's this cyclical kind of issue with CPS with our tax money and taking from Social Security. There's a lot of people online like Maximus Disclosure that breaks down all of Maximus, which people do not know. That's even
What is
above.
Maximus?
He can explain that to you. That's not my wheelhouse. I have a team of many people. You're kind of asking me some questions that, are not my wheelhouse, and I don't claim that at all. I have great people that we have for several years now, come together and done this very real research, despite all the mockery and the exaggeration that's happening in the masses, to really break down for the people and show what this is, that this is systemic. We're not saying like, oh, it's systemic. No, this is through our government, through legislation, breaking down ASFA, breaking down how Social Security funnels out the trusts, on children and what adoption is. I mean, it's a lot to get into in a conversation like this, but we've definitely put the work out with Maximus Disclosure, myself, Sylvia Beachy with Rescue the Fosters, who is an ex-case manager, and other foster youth as well.
Well, I noticed that one of the really crazy things is with the websites with adoptions. Like it's almost like it looks like a market. But
they're selling children online. Adoption and private adoption is truly where they're truly able to hide everything. Oh, it's okay. Private adoption is where a lot of stuff goes on, but adoption is selling our children. They make money off of each child that they adopt out, and, that's the issue with grooming the public. There's all these countless children that don't have loving homes. Yes, they do. But our system is taking and tearing us apart, handing them to abusers or pedophiles or all of that, when we really need to be focusing on better ways to handle this in terms of how do we support families that are going through a struggle so that they can thrive, meaning that their children are now in a thriving environment, in a safe environment. And that's what I feel our tax money should be going to. And if any of my Social Security or anything should be going towards that kind of stuff, not this that's currently happening. Where we're at right now is breaking children, then we wonder why we have the generations happening that we do right now. They need a foundation. Everyone's going to. A child, you can give them the biggest mansion, you can tell them their mom never wanted them or whatever. A child is always going to want to know where they came from. Just like we always want to know where we came from, no matter how old or dead or alive we are. Children always want to know where they came from and their parents, and that's not up to adoption or the system or anything like that to do. Children have rights, and one of the main rights is a right to their biological family, and the reason why this is violated is because they can't speak. So this is really, really vile, in the least.
So as far as the laws go, I mean, if you could change anything like regarding the laws, what would it be?
Regarding the laws, well, we need to abolish CPS. There's I know that sounds extreme to people, but this is now a business at this point. It's not a service, it's not government, any of that. This is
Wait,
a
hold
business.
on. You said it's a business? CPS is a business?
Yes, it absolutely is. The state has to keep feeding itself for larger funds. They need quotas for the funds next year, and then what's happening is that they are taking on too much, so they're contracting out to local organizations and businesses to handle case plans and services, where then how is the government having oversight over each of those?
So you can't FOIA or Freedom of Information Act any of these contractors or service providers?
You can, but you're probably not going to get anything. You can FOIA anything you want, but that doesn't mean they have to answer it. And as we know, it's all the confidentiality in these family court and CPS cases, which they hide behind saying it's for the safety of the children, for the best interest of the children, when that's not the case. We have so many people that are growing up now and finding their real families or finding out the truth that, like, I was loved by my family and the state stole me, the system took me. and put me with these people, which a lot of them are reporting that they were placed with very abusive families and situations moving forward for the rest of their lives, including my own cousin, who was hidden from our family my entire life and apparently was secretly adopted out at birth by my grandmother.
So what did your parents say when they found the cousin?
Oh, my mom told her that she wasn't family.
You're kidding.
No, no one really understands
They weren't like
who my
happy.
parents are.
They weren't.
No, they weren't. My mom said, "You are not family."
Wow.
Yeah. My mom is a covert abuser behind closed doors. That's why you don't see her a lot in national centers.
I remember seeing like a magazine or something like online regarding like your parents evidently like going through a scandalous problem or maybe a divorce or something. I don't remember exactly.
I've told my whole life. You know, they're out as like this American family, and then we've got infidelity, alcoholism, sex addiction, mistresses, you know, restraining orders. My dad's gone who knows where, you know, for how long, and all of this going on behind the scenes. So yeah, they had a 10-year divorce proceeding where my mom filed restraining orders on him. My dad's mistress, Brendy, was a producer out in California when I was growing up. I knew who she was. I used to pick up the phone and catch my dad on the phone with her, and all of that while I'm basically raising my younger brother. And she actually had to seek support at a Venice women's clinic and everything out in California to be able to have people that would support her and help her to file restraining orders against my father. And a lot of people have come forward in different scenarios. Oh, my mom took me, you know, to my family because my parents were having issues, and my dad made one phone call to your dad, and the next morning, you know, our house was surrounded by black SUVs. They were arresting my mom, and they were taking me to the police station in my pajamas. And I was like, I'm with my mom. I want to be with my mom, you know.
I know your dad, he's campaigned for the sheriff in Indian River County, and he's very involved with the local sheriff. And is it Indian River County where Adam's head was found?
Yes.
And so where did they live when the abduction took place?
They lived in Hollywood, Florida at the time, and then he was his head was found about 14 days after he was taken up in Vero Beach. I think it's about 130 miles north of where he was originally taken. And
So
then
hold on,
they
wait,
moved,
wait.
And then we moved to that town.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask. So they lived in Hollywood, Florida, and then after Hollywood, Florida, they moved to the area where his head was located.
Yes, and that's where I grew up.
And wasn't there an issue with something with his head, like the dental records or something? I forget the case.
Adam's case has been controversial since the day it happened. You know, that's also why I thought I didn't think anything of it when I'm questioning these things, you know, and looking. All the records are, you know, free online and the reports. But my parents did, you know, fight that really hard to not get out. And yes, there's a lot of controversy.
Why would they fight? Well, I don't understand why they would fight it. I mean, like...
Well, they tried to sue Sears after my brother went missing, and Sears was able to prove that it wasn't a few minutes that my brother was left. It was over 90 minutes, and that they had my mother's significantly younger live-in with them at the time, James Campbell, came forward and did a deposition revealing the lifestyle of my parents. No one has ever asked who were John and Reve Walsh before Adam. And, you know, they were cocaine users. They had open relationships. My dad was, you know, according to police reports, sleeping with anything with legs. My mom has this live-in lover that comes forward and reveals all of this, saying, you know, he actually made the statement, I would not be surprised if Adam ran away based on the situations, the domestic situations going on.
Very strange.
I've had people come forward saying, I lived in the neighborhood, your parents never gave a crap about that boy until he went missing.
And how? What?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I've had people that were like friends of my mom's, and you know, their moms were friends with my mom. And so they remember going over like before and after Adam went missing and stuff, and they've talked about that.
And so your mom, they said that your mom did not care about him before he went missing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I mean, that's kind of pigeonholing me. I didn't say it. The people
No, but they
were like,
said it, yeah.
your parent. Oh, those parents didn't give a crap about that boy until he went missing.
Wow.
So, and there's been a lot of controversy, even in the records. The secretary says that my mom came in and Adam wasn't with her. My mom insists that Adam was with her, but then she says, oh, Adam was so shy and he always wanted to be with me, he'd never leave me. But then she says, oh, I left him in the car that day to go in and pay, and then I left him in Sears at the video games by himself while I went shopping. I mean, it's just... And the times she couldn't get right, and her boyfriend, that's what I was saying about Sears, is he started coming forward saying stuff, and then they decided to suddenly drop the Sears lawsuit once that came out, because they tried to get the judge to say that it wasn't relevant to the case, and she said absolutely it is. It shows, what these people were before, their son was taken.
So I thought that they won the Sears suit, so they did not. Your
No,
parents
they
did
didn't.
not.
They dropped it. And then, a little bit after, I don't know the timing, but then America's Most Wanted came about, and he, went into that while lobbying for legislation. I digress. He started with lobbying for legislation.
Interesting. Another interesting thing that I thought was very interesting is, are you familiar with the guy Billy Corbin who did the Cocaine Cowboys documentary? You're familiar with him in Miami? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I saw where he actually did a podcast saying that he was there the day that Adam went missing. He was in the Sears department store with his mother. Mm-hmm. Have you ever talked to him about that?
No, I've never talked to him. I remember seeing that, a couple of years ago when I started. I mean, I've been researching and doing this work for several years, and then I started coming out about it, and then that's when the retaliation and the terrorizing started. I mean, I haven't seen my children in over a year. And my parents, over a year, and they haven't lived with me in 2 years. And then my 5-day-old baby is taken on false reports and, is sent to a foster home. Not with John Walsh, not with his nannies, not with her siblings. Sends her to a foster home where he quotes himself that over 88% of child trafficking comes from the foster care system.
And so
they've been asked month after month.
How did your parent? Okay, so where are the kids now?
They have them all split up. My parents got the boys, they adopted them and got the fraud, and then they gave my daughter to her biological father, who had never met her and came out of nowhere with these allegations that my parents gave to him. My daughter has an inheritance. That's very real. And then my baby, the most vulnerable, in a stranger's home somewhere.
Wow.
And I've done everything I was supposed to do. I'll just leave it at that. I've done everything, and 2 and 3 times over.
So I don't understand how your parents could have ever gotten past the foster system. I thought that they did more check work before they would even allow you to foster a child, or especially adopt a child.
No, that's not where we're at anymore. I mean, people really need to get over how they feel about things or what they want to believe, and really start looking at what is going on, and how they feel about that then, right? And we know that the foster system, the family courts and everything are handing children. Listen, if you hand children to abusers or there's issues, that keeps the system going. It keeps bringing money in. They know that a protective parent they can go after because that parent's never going to give up fighting for their child. And they use that. And they're breaking children. They don't care. My big thing is that in all of this, the perspective of the children is never even mentioned. We're all these adults going politics, and we're doing conventions, and we're doing all of this, and we have the ideas, and we're convincing each other, I don't believe that, or maybe that's making sense, and we're all in ourselves and our ego. While we do that, there's children being molested and raped and sold and in cages. And every day really being taken and tormented and ripped from their loving mothers and fathers, while the parents are terrorized and demonized and said that they're child abusers and da-da. This is a system falsifying records. There's no such thing as perjury. There's no such thing as due process. And there's no such thing as the Constitution in our family court and child protective system. Now, for me, I believe that if we're talking about the lives and futures of children, that's how dare we decide that? That's for God to decide, okay? And when we're allowing a system to make a system by default only cares about protocol and output and product, right? It doesn't care about nuances and people's hearts and souls and all of that. Why are we doing this? Why? This was a social experiment that, by the Clintons, and goes back to Margaret Sanger and Dr. Kinsey and even Nazi Germany, where they were experimenting by taking foster boys and placing them with pedophiles. This is an ideology as well.
That kind of reminds me of, isn't there like a, I forget the NAMBLA or something? Is it?
Yeah, they love me. The North American Man-Boy Lovers Association, which says their tagline is sex before 8 or it's too late. And they put a hit out on my life. My dad talks about it in his 2019 DOJ speech. Now, they put a hit out on my life before I was even a year old. On a baby.
So why did they put a hit out on you? Did
I was a year old. I have no idea.
I didn't know if you said.
No, well, of course it was my dad said, because I'm going after them.
Oh, your dad said, because he was making it out like he was going to go after them.
Right.
So did he?
I don't know. I was one.
I
was hid out on an island.
So I'm just saying, do you ever remember him going, like, did anything ever come up since then, or did he just, is that
no,
just
something?
something
No, and then NAMBLA
out?
says that they've dissolved and they don't exist anymore, but they actually are still having meetings, and they do still very much exist. NAMBLA also went to Congress and has congressional work that now we're seeing. When you see the trans community and all these people, these cross-dressers saying, we're gonna make you, like, we're gonna be in your church, we're gonna be in your schools, we're gonna be in your bathroom, haha. They were already presenting this via NAMBLA in Congress decades ago, and we're here. Congress also helped form the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a nonprofit of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. And it's a nonprofit created by Congress, which was Senator Byrd was overseeing that at that time.
And then I know the other thing that they try to do too. Isn't there some like art program or something like that they're always trying to like do or promote? Like, is that, or maybe is that separate? The art and the embassies, or is that?
Well, that's a separate thing that then gets tied into it. That's kind of for more advanced information into this issue, but yes, I mean, the National Center has players that we need to look at. Les Wexner being involved, Jeff Koons being involved, Richard Branson, World Economic Forum with the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and these people are all involved. I mean, Richard Branson is of NXIVM sex cult relation as well as a donor to Terramar, which is Ghislaine Maxwell. We've got Jeff Koons.
Wait. You said the Terramar issue with Ghislaine Maxwell is what now?
Richard Branson was a donating founder for the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So an international organization on our kids with Hillary Rodham Clinton, Tony Blair, his mother Eve Branson, the World Economic Forum. National Center, and these are global organizations now. These are not national organizations for our kids. So they formed that, and yes, Richard Branson donated to found that, and he also is related or associated with NXIVM sex cult, Necker Island, these things, and Richard.
But you said something about Terramar. Like, what's the deal with Terramar?
He also donated and is a founder and
so this
a principal
all the way
in
back.
Terramar,
So this
which is a sovereign area. So we've got children's. Authority on international children's everything, and donate to a sovereign water.
I was going to say,
territory.
I didn't even think that's not even is it a property? Because Ghislaine Maxwell.
Who knows? I don't even go into that.
But
stuff.
what I'm saying is Ghislaine Maxwell said, like in her deposition, I remember reading some of her deposition, that she is a citizen of this Terramar.
Yeah.
So this is
and
like,
they had the whole campaign, like join Terramar, and I remember all that stuff.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of this? Yeah. I've not heard of it either.
And if you think about it, I mean, like the water's a highway, things like that. I don't want to go down those rabbit holes. I'd like to just stick to what we can prove and what we know. My main thing is not, I honored my parents. I wanted to handle our issues, even when they're assaulting me, threatening to hold my children hostage, coming and terrorizing us, everything. I wanted to handle that as a family. But when you do all of this, and I was already an advocate, so many people know I was already an advocate speaking out against the corruption within CPS and family courts in America. This is the source of our child trafficking. And I didn't make that up. The FBI did. And the National Center for Missing Exploited Children did. So,
isn't your dad, I thought I saw something too where he says he's a part of like FBI and maybe like Scotland Yard or something crazy.
What people don't understand is that law enforcement worships my father. Like, literally worships my father. He's worked with and has relationships with every 3-letter agency there is. He's an honorary U.S. Marshal, like I said, one of 3 in U.S. history.
And then with that, so who are the other 2? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Reagan, ironically, is one of them.
Like President Reagan?
Yes, President Reagan, and I don't remember the third one. Those were the only 2 that really I cared about.
Yeah.
Was like, oh my gosh, jaw-dropping.
Yeah. And the other one, I wonder who the other one is.
You could Google it easily.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. Everyone has family issues, and that's the thing that we need to start realizing is that everyone has issues. Everyone has things that go wrong in your family, and it's up to us coming together as family and loving thy neighbor and everything, and not handing our tax money and our authority over our children to a government system. That's ludicrous.
I remember seeing your dad on these telethons and like raising money, like on the like on television and stuff like that. Like, did he ever use you for stuff like that too? Like,
yeah, they would do whole fundraisers where I was like thing of the day, and it was to raise money for the National Center when I was young. Yeah, fashion shows, the luncheons, these kind of initiatives or whatever. But, I think that it's interesting that they get $40 million of federal funding as a nonprofit, and then they receive over $20 million from private sector donors. Which then
so, like, who are some of the donors that they use?
Like I said, Les Wexner donating.
So Les
through
Wexner is who? And what is
he
L
is
Brands?
The main funder to Epstein, backer of Jeffrey Epstein.